Procedure went well. It did go good. I got the news I wanted. I got good news, which is great. Basically, they kind of looked in. They saw that there had been some kind of notable damage to my esophagus and my stomach, but it was healing, and all the ulcers are gone, and there was like a bit of a hernia I had in there last time. That's all cleaned up and stuff. So basically, it's just kind of a matter of time thing. Like, my body was definitely damaged, but it is healing, and it will just kind of continue to heal. And it's just kind of a continuous path. But we're on the right path, and that's really the best news we could have gotten. So I am a little tired today. I'm gonna stream as long as I can, but I'm sure I'll stop at some point to fall asleep or rest or something. I didn't get a ton of sleep last night. But hope you're all doing okay and having a nice day. Real quick, just want to say hello, welcome to the stream. Server the Great Horde Rat, Zoner123, Devsuff, Ingolian, Sour Milk Cake, Ikatalka, Zarinth, Laminated Guy 57, Gruzgob, Gigagogantes, Turtloid, CS, Ratwood 19, and J Phoenix. Good to see you all. And welcome. Whew. Goodness. I'm gonna be yawning a lot. Bangs out, also good to see you. All right. I'll fall asleep midstream. Not quite that level of tired. I have been very tired in the past, but not quite at that level. Hey Mops, how you doing? Declaring war on me, Franz. Rude son of a gun. Not so much for focusing my efforts on Marienburg.
Another wretched foul lizard thing joins the red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
7 months, let's go. 7 months. Question: which Warhammer character is excited about the New Year's? Also hope you get better soon.
Me too, dude. Thank you very much for the 7 months. I really appreciate it. Which Warhammer character is excited about the New Year's? I imagine every single Warhammer character tends to get really excited about like New Year's and stuff like that. It's a time for change and for new schemes, or for things to get better, or to potentially lure out their enemies and strike at them and yada yada yada. I think there's excitement to be found in there's always excitement to be found in the New Year's. You're sad the new Flesh Eater Court mini will be for a limited time. It's a really cool mini. I do think it actually makes for a nice limited mini, because basically it seems kind of cleverly designed to be really good for adding onto your throne, the terrain piece mini. I think having the terrain piece, because their terrain piece being the bone throne or whatever the fuck it's called, that model would be really good to have like a mini that you put into it once you have once you've like summoned it on the battlefield or whatever.
I will.
Bye.
Another wretched foul
Oh, Scratch! Holy shit!
joins the red host.
Thank you so much for the 5 gift subs, dude.
Cursed Sotek spawn.
Thank you very, very much. That was super nice of you. I really appreciate the generous support. Thank you. If you got a sub from the super badass Scratch 1211, make sure to thank him. Please, please. Thank you very, very much.
Another wretched foul lizard thing joins the red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
Hi, one question for End Times Tyrion. I heard Teti and Malekith switched the bad guy good guy thing, and Alariel also switched to Malekith's side. Can you quick explain what happened for this to be?
Sure. First of all, Raving, thanks so much for the year of Prime, dude. Very generous of you. I really appreciate the continued support. Thank you so much. In answer to your question, okay, so to put it as simple as possible, the war started off with Tyrion as the good guy, Malekith as the bad guy. But as the war progressed, Tyrion kind of lost himself to grief and rage. He basically pulled an Anarian. And as he pulled an Anarian and kind of lost himself to those emotions, he ended up embracing Cain. Especially when he found out that Teclis had betrayed him and gotten Tyrion's daughter murdered. Once Tyrion realized he had been betrayed by his brother and like all this just terrible shit started going wrong, he kind of lost it. And he ended up drawing the Sword of Cain, and when he did that, he went completely insane. So Tyrion became like this bloodthirsty, terrifying avatar of the God of War, and was super not good. Like, you know, he completely lost his mind, and things were getting really, really bad. So because of that, because he had totally lost himself like that, it resulted in him he was just kind of gone. The Tyrion everybody knowed and loved was no longer there. And once he went crazy and he drew the Sword of Cain, Teclis basically convinced Malekith that Malekith needed to stand against Tyrion and kind of embrace Ashurin instead. And so Malekith became the relative. Malekith was not a good guy, but he was, when everything's relative, he was the good guy in comparison to Tyrion being the bad guy. Because Tyrion had embraced a god that wanted nothing more than endless slaughter, whereas Malekith was actually trying to stabilize the elven nations. And so their big war breaks out, and Alariel ends up siding with Malekith over Tyrion because, you know, Tyrion had lost his mind. That being said, like, calling Malekith a good guy would be not correct. He was still pretty terrible, and a lot of the elves were like constantly watching him because nobody trusted him. And he was definitely having a lot of struggles in that the high elves were really trying to get him to clean up his act so that there would actually be those who were willing to rally behind him. And it was very messy. It wasn't the best writing either. I am not a fan of the Cain storyline. Like, I understand what they were trying to do, but they didn't pull it off super well. And then they also proceeded to like kneecap themselves in Archaon when they just brought back Tyrion anyway and made him back into a good guy. So it made the entirety of the Cain thing pointless. Because like the biggest ramification of that was Tyrion's death, and then they just pulled a fucking like comic book move and just immediately brought him back to life. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, so we did all that shit for no reason.
What? I will.
More shirls. A lot more slaves. Wish heroes had the ability to like gather slaves. That would be a nice thing. I'm gonna have him start tearing apart the place. No, they didn't put Munimim in this. The OVN mod for the Fimir seems to have taken very little inspiration from the actual like wealth of Fimir lore we have now. Instead, it's just a it's very heavily like a fan mod. That has a bunch of fan stuff that doesn't really have any notable I might be able to win this. It's gonna be tricky. It's rather lacking in the using pre-established stuff system. Living Legend, Lally, good to see you. Oh, Mops, what would you like a lore story about? Besides Chaos Dwarves, what do I think the next DLC is and why? My current vote for the DLC to come after the Chaos Dwarfs, I don't have any like reasoning behind it. It's just more of my hope. I think it's gonna be a Lord pack, like more of the stereotypical Lord pack where it's like so and so versus so and so. The one that I would be the happiest to see, for me personally, would be Kislev versus Norska, and I would call it like the Witch and the Hag. And it would be Muna Mim, the big, most powerful Fimir matriarch that we know of, versus Mother Ostankya, who's like the Baba Yaga character. So it would be like a fight between the terrifying Kislevite creatures of the Oblasts and the deep forests versus the terrifying Norscan monsters of the northern wastes and the bogs. I think that would make for a very, very fun thematic DLC. Horace, good to see you. What do I want for the new Flesh Eater Court tome if it comes out next year? I want or not Abarash, the other one. I want Ushoran. Give me Ushoran, you cowards. I need Ushoran injected straight into my veins. Like we've gotten about 2 Mortarks every edition. And we're now in 3rd edition. So I'm ready for my next Mortark, and I want it to be the Flesh Eater Court Mortark, please. But they've been talking about I mean, they've been flat out talking about Ushoran for like, it's been years at this point. There's been so much build up to Ushoran in the Flesh Eater Courts. We're just waiting on him to finally like come out fully. Like we know relatively where he is. We know that he's active. We know that he's strong. We're just kind of waiting for him to make his grand debut. Those are the shortest, dinkiest little spears. I also like that they get like twice as large once they actually hit someone. All right. Where's my other unit of count? Oh, okay. How did Throg make it to AOS? I don't know. They have not explained that particular nugget yet. We know that there's a Throg the Troll King in Age of Sigmar. He's not yet playable. We don't know where he is right now. He only showed up very, very briefly to fight against the Stormcast Eternals. He showed up, fought the Stormcast Eternals, lost, and then vanished, and we haven't seen him since. So where the fuck is he? Who knows? Throg should get a book series in AOS. Dude, I would read the shit out of that. That being said, I'm expecting Throg will probably make an appearance in I don't know if they would want him in the Beasts of Chaos book or if they would want him in the Slaves to Darkness book. He was said to be leading an army of chaos monsters, but in the realm of Gur, but he's around there somewhere. Hades does not like anything Warhammer Fantasy. He has made that very abundant. Now, it's fine for Hades to have easily the most trash fucking opinion in the chat. Okay, we're all entitled to our opinions, even if they're wrong objectively and subjectively, and are basically a war crime. But it's okay. They're still allowed to be had. Did I see the Ghoul King with the Crown Delusion? Yeah, it looks great. That's a really badass model. That's a perfect model if you're running Flesh Eater Courts and you want to run the terrain piece where you put the character on top of the throne. Like, I would just get rid of the bone throne and put that on top instead. Som Mage and Chuckly Nurgling, good to see you guys. A Narian for your lore story? That one's gonna be a little tricky, but I think I can do that. Yeah, no, Hades, I still think your opinion's trash, dude. Like, could not disagree more.
Another wretched, foul-lizard thing joins the red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
Half a year already? Time flies when you are having fun with Sotek.
Hey, Horatio, good to see you, dude. Thanks so much for the 6 months. All right, so we have an Anarian lore story request. So, Anarian. Like, so we'll do a small amount of reading, and then I'll just kind of talk about them while we play. Let's talk a bit about Anarian here. All right, Anarian the Defender. Anarian was the greatest and most tragic of all elf heroes, a doomed champion, a fallen god. He was the mightiest warrior in an age of darkness and constant strife, best loved and most accursed of all the Phoenix Kings of Ulthuan. Anarian's reign began in a time of terror and strife. The polar gates, once used by the star-walking Old Ones to step from world to world, had collapsed, unleashing a roiling tide of magical energy across the world. In the magic's wake came the demonic legions of the Chaos Gods, who sought to claim the mortal world for their own. Against a foe such as this, the elves stood no chance, for they were unschooled in warfare, and their magic was used only for peaceful pursuits. Ulthuan was soon ablaze with war and slaughter, and the elves pleaded to their gods for salvation. Anarion was a wanderer who had traveled the length of the world, but who swiftly returned to Ulthuan in its time of need. Realizing that the elves could not long stand against the unfettered fury of chaos, Ashurin battled his way through the land to the shrine of Ashurin. There he offered himself to the sacred fire and implored Ashurin to save his people. Ashurin made no response, but Anarion held to his promise and cast himself into the white-hot flames. Yet Anarion did not die that day. He emerged unscathed from the fires, transformed by Ashurin's divine will from mortal elf, the first and mightiest of the Phoenix Kings. Anarion began his reign with a truly auspicious victory. Outside the walls of the temple, he faced a howling demon horde whose black hearts were set on toppling the shrine, that the sacred fires might forever be extinguished. With a single throw of his hunting spear, Anarion slew the demon lord who led the charge. Then, scarcely breaking a step, he took up the demon's weapon and butchered the rest of that abominable host. Word of Anarion's victory swiftly spread across Ulthuan. All elvenkind took heart at his actions and rallied to him even as the demons reeled from the defeat. Kalidor Dragon-Tamer, the greatest wizard of that era, swore fealty to Anarion, and together they trained the elves in the art of battle. Whilst Anarion bade the priests of Vol forge mighty weapons of tempered Ithilmur and steel, Kalidor undertook the tutelage of his fellow mages, teaching them great sorceries to banish and destroy. Thus changed the elves' fortunes. With Anarion at their head, the children of Ulthuan took the fight to the demons, casting down their champions and hurling their armies back into the realm of chaos. For nearly a century, the world dragged on without respite or sign of victory, and the elves began to lose heart. Moments of peace were few, and even those were tainted by the knowledge that the demons would soon return. Even the implacable Anarion realized there could be no victory, only a slow and inevitable defeat. Ultimately, it was Kalidor, that wisest and most ancient of sorcerers, who would offer salvation. He devised a plan to create a cosmic vortex that would drain the magic from the world, and with it the demons who rode upon its fury. It was a desperate plan, with little hope of success, but Kalidor and many like him thought a last desperate gamble would be preferable to the slow death the elf people were enduring. Anarion opposed Kalidor's plan, calling it the Council of Despair. Although in his heart he knew the war was unwinnable, the Phoenix King was determined to put off the end for as long as possible, rather than risk Kalidor's plan failing. Such were Anarion's charisma and powers of reason that he surely would have changed Kalidor's mind entirely. Yet soon thereafter, demons overran Avalorn. Astariel, Everqueen of Ulthuan and wife to Anarion, was slain in the attack, and their children could not be found amongst the carnage. Upon hearing of his family's fate, Anarion was overcome with terrible fury. He swore to kill every demon on the face of the world, and declared he would travel to the Blighted Isle. Dread filled those who heard his words, for it could mean only one thing. Anarion intended to draw forth the Widowmaker, a weapon of terrible power that waited, embedded in the great black altar of Cain since the beginning of time. As old as the world itself, it was the ultimate weapon, death itself made manifest. A splinter of the fatal weapon forged for the death god Cain, capable of slaying mortals and gods alike. All knew that to wield Cain's blade was to invite death, damn your soul, and doom your lineage forevermore. Upon learning of his liege's intent, Kalidor beseeched Anarion to relent, but he would not be dissuaded. Ignoring all warnings from mortal and immortal alike, Anarion vaulted onto the back of Indraugnir, the greatest of dragons, and set off for the Blighted Isle. The journey was long and arduous and tested even Indraugnir's might. Winged demons assailed elf and dragon as they traveled, trying to turn Anarion from his path. The elf gods whispered warnings in Anarion's ear, but if he heard, he paid them no heed. Parting ways with Indraugnir just a few leagues from the altar of Cain, Anarion walked towards his fate. It is said even the ghost of his departed wife pleaded with him to turn back. Yet as he stood before the altar, Anarion hardened his heart and wrenched free the great blood-dripping weapon, sealing his fate and that of his people. When Anarion returned, those elves most embittered by the war flocked to his side, and he created a kingdom in the dismal land of Nagaryth. There, to the surprise of everyone, he took another wife, the beautiful seeress Morathi. In time, Morathi bore him a second son, who they named Malekith. Soon after, the court of Anarion earned itself a dark reputation, and the elves of other lands were reluctant to go there. Tales of cruelty at Anarion's court began to spread across Ulthuan. Even Kalador led his dragon riders south to his own land. They said that Kalador's departure angered Anarion greatly, but the demon struck again before his wrath could bear fruit. Such was the size and ferocity of the demonic attack that it became obvious to all but Anarion that the war was lost, and the war was doomed to eternal darkness. Kalador, fully aware of Anarion's incipient madness, decided there was only one thing left to do. He called together a convocation of the greatest High Elf sorcerers then living and assembled them on the Isle of the Dead. With Kalador Dragon Tamer intent on performing the ritual, Anarion was left with no choice. He assembled his forces and moved to defend the mages on the Isle of the Dead. At the center of Ulthuan, the two forces met. Dragons so numerous that their wings darkened the sky descended upon the Chaos host. Elves and demons were slain in their thousands, and the death agonies of monsters filled the sea with foam. As the creation of the vortex began, the seas churned and a terrible wind blew from the north. The skies darkened and raw magic lashed the tortured earth. At last, Anarion, with only the faithful Indragnir beside him, fought a bloody battle against four of the greater demons of the Chaos Gods as they strove to breach Kalador's wards. It was a battle no mortal could ever win, yet Anarion's fury and the determination of that day set him amongst the ranks of the gods. One by one, the foul creatures fell beneath the sword of Cain, though Anarion was mortally wounded in return. While the battle raged, the High Elf sorcerers chanted the spell that would create the vortex. Chain lightning flickered, the world shuddered. For a moment, all was silent. Then the mountains shivered. Terrible energies pulsed beneath the earth and sky, or between. From the mountaintops, bolts of pure power leapt to converge over the Isle of the Dead. While Anarion and his outnumbered army fought, the sorcerers struggled to complete their ritual. One by one they died, the weakest succumbing first as the magic they sought to control burned out their minds. Even as Anarion defeated the four demons, the ritual was finally completed, or at least partially. The High Elf sorcerers had succeeded in opening a vortex to drain away the raging magic, but were trapped within it, eternally keeping it open, forever held in their battle with chaos. His foes defeated and his body ruined, Anarion climbed wearily upon the back of the wounded Indragnir and made once more for the Blighted Isle. Barely managing to complete the journey, Indragnir crashed to the ground on the shores of that dismal island. Trembling from fatigue and the terrible wounds to his ancient body, Indragnir gave one last bellow of defiance and died. Alone, Anarion crawled back to the altar of Cain. He knew that should anyone take the weapon of Cain, they could rule the world, and so he thrust it back into the rock from whence it came. Then it is said he laid down beside the ravaged and torn bulk of his beloved steed and passed from that age of the world. Some notes that I'll add, because it's important to note just kind of what happened to... that covers a lot of broad strokes, but we do have quite a few more specifics about what happened to Anarion. One of the kind of really notable things for him, especially in a very sad sense, is that before kind of everything went really, really haywire and just, bad, Anarion was like a very good father. Like, he loved his kids, he loved his wife Astariel. A lot of things were going really, really well, and the sacrifice that Anarion was willing to make for the elves in order to protect them, in order to give them a chance at life, genuinely cannot be understated. Because one of the things that he did that was kind of so shocking was that like one of the biggest notable things is that when it says that Anarion offered himself to the Shrine of Cain, or the Shrine of Ashurin, it doesn't, I don't think it's a little too vague about what exactly that entailed, because essentially what happened was that traditionally, like, the elves had a relationship with Ashurin, but their relationship with Ashurin was that they would make offerings of, like, animals. They would do animal sacrifices. So they would, maybe they'd slaughter, like, a lamb or a particular creature of note, or they'd burn important ritualistic offerings. And the elves were pleading with Ashurin for years, trying to convince Ashurin to help them. But the thing that's worth noting about Ashurin is a very distant god. As the Emperor of the Heavens and kind of like the Keeper of Balance, Ashurin very distinctly believed in not getting involved in mortal affairs. He believed that it was always best for the gods to be involved as little as possible. And so he refused to get involved for really any reason for a hot minute. The thing that finally convinced him is first, like, you know, Anarion showed up and begged for his involvement, and he made no response. Then Anarion burnt all of the, like, the greatest offerings he could think of, and there was no response. And then he slaughtered and sacrificed this beautiful creature. Still no response. What finally got Ashurin's attention was that Anarion made the ultimate sacrifice, which is that he basically said, either grant me your blessing or I would rather die. Like, if you will not, I will give my life if you will just please help my people. And so Ashurin threw himself into the fire. And the thing is, Ashurin had no idea what was going to happen. Like, well, they knew that anything that went to the fire was consumed. So as far as Ashurin was concerned, he was going to die. So he hurls himself into the fire. And the description of Ashurin throwing himself into the fire is gnarly. Because the book kind of says he emerges on the other side unscathed. While that's technically true, it leaves out a critical detail, which is that Ashurin dies. He throws himself into the fire, and it starts like completely consuming him, and he's in a horrible agony. Like, it burns away his flesh, it burns away his hair. It starts like it burns up his muscles, and he basically starts collapsing. Sorry, not Ashurin, Anarion. Anarion throws himself into the flame of Ashurin. Sorry, I had drugs in my system a little bit still, so forgive me if I get jumbled up a little bit. So Anarion is burnt basically to a crisp, like he's almost like a blackened skeleton, and he falls to the ground in the midst of the flame of Ashurin, and he dies. Like, he ceases to be living. But almost the second he dies, or at least it appears that he dies, he very slowly starts picking himself up and continuing to push through the fire despite the agony. And as he's starting to push through the fire and starts reaching the other side, his body starts rapidly regenerating. But it doesn't just regenerate to what he looked like before then, it regenerates to what Anarion becomes, which is that he becomes this beautiful, like, demigod-like figure, like, radiating with Ashurin's power. So, like, he comes out the other side, basically a demigod or a god, and he has a significant amount of Ashurin's own divine power inside of him. He's basically a god at this point. When he walks out the other side of the flame, and literally the first thing he does is he walks outside, he picks up a hunting spear, so a spear meant to kill like various beasts and stuff, and he sees like I don't think it's Nakari he fights. I believe it's a different demon general, like a demon prince or something, and he just points at him and then just throws this fucking like wooden spear with like a metal tip and just one shots the bastard. Like, he literally just like 360 no scopes a demon general and kills him, and then he picks up the demon's own weapon and uses it to slaughter the demonic horde by himself. And the demons are like, holy shit, like, what in the world? And Ashurin at this point is Anarion at this point is very much in the category of no demon is really able to go toe to toe with him. Like, anywhere he is, he's able to lead the elves to victory, especially once he gets in Draupnir and like Kalador and everything. Like, he's unbeatable. The problem is he can't be everywhere at once. There are times, you know, wherever he is, there is someone else, or there's somewhere else the demons are attacking that he's not, and they're gonna, you know, they're having a really hard time. And Anarian does a really good job of like holding the line for roughly a century, a little over a century. But eventually, as the story kind of tells, like the elves they're kind of holding the line, but not much more than that. So eventually they start being pushed back. We got what? Fimir here with throwing axes? Oh, with shield breaker too. Nice. They have very, very green heads. Okay, so we got throwing axe Fimir, Regiment of Renown. Also got the killing eye boys. I like their coloration.
Wretched foul lizard thing joins the red host.
But in any event,
Cursed Sotek spawn.
of course, the other really notable thing is that, of course, that you get the super famous incident of the you get the super famous incident of Anarian finds out that his wife is murdered by Nakari, and Nakari, you know, Astariel's death was awful. Like, she did not have a good death. It was a very awful, terrible, horrific, should not be described in pleasant company type death. So, you know, kind of a bad time all around. Actually, no, if they're gonna come to us, yeah, let's find them in the bog. But another really interesting note about Anarian is Anarian, there was a lot about him where Anarian was doing an okay job of hanging on to like his sanity, because taking a god into your body is not, you really don't want to do that. It's not going to end well the vast majority of the time. Because the problem of taking a god into your mortal form is that, you know, your body is not designed to deal with that. And as your body is not designed to deal with a godly essence being inside it, eventually the god that's inside of you essentially starts to kind of overwhelm who you normally are. And it kind of gets to the point where it starts to replace you with its own designs and its own desires and its own efforts. There's some notes about Anarian by the Imperial scholar Richter Kless. Richter Kless wrote the Liber Chaotica. And one of the things that Kless writes about is he highly suspects that one of the main reasons Anarian was so against the idea of trying to thwart the demons of chaos by like removing all the magic from the world and everything. He suspects one of the reasons that Anarian was so against the idea, despite the fact that it was their only like realistic opportunity to you know, to really like win the war, was that it wasn't actually a Narian who was against the plan. It was Assurin who was against the plan. Because Assurin, despite, you know, being this god of the elves and the god of order and all this stuff, Assurin relied on the world being very magically charged in order for him to be able to have a significant amount of power. Because being a god, you know, he is a being of magic. He is not a, you know, gods rely on magic in order for their essence to kind of exist and do whatever it needs to do on the mortal plane. So it's very likely that, you know, Assurin had already been kind of losing himself Adarian had already been essentially losing himself to Assurin, and just, you know, nobody really realized it. But obviously it got a lot worse when he took Cain into himself, because at that point Anarian now had two gods who were very opposed gods fighting over his soul and his mortal form, and, you know, predictably that ended very badly for him. All right, good. The Emperor's dead. But yeah, Anarian was an interesting guy. It's also really sad to know what Cain kind of did to him. Rathalos, thank you so much for the 13 months, by the way. Like, Anarian was like a really good and loving husband, but once he took Cain into his body, he became like such a monster. Like, Morathi was always kind of not great. There was a lot of very suspicious things about Morathi, but like, it's very explicit in one of the stories we have about Anarian, that Anarian was an abusive husband to Morathi. Like, he was very abusive. But she loved him. She loved him so much, but it was like a fanatical, desperate love. Orange and Crescent, welcome to the stream. Regaldo and Calcifer, good to see you as well. Can greater demons shrink in size if they wanted to? They are able to take on like guises, and they are able to hide what you could kind of call like their quote unquote true form. So they can like appear in different shapes and sizes, but like when they're fighting on a battlefield and like they're like going all out to try and destroy and kill people, generally speaking, they're always quite large. But they do have the ability to disguise themselves as smaller things. You know, like Sarthoriel the Everwatcher in Warhammer 1 appears as a white raven. Whereas we've seen Nakari appear as like a beautiful elven maiden. Granted, he did not pick that disguise. Malekith forced that disguise on him. But like, it's not unusual for greater demons to hide themselves. All right, so we got ourselves a cool staff. The Staff of Balor's Eye. At the tip of this magical staff rests an ancient Fimir artifact known as Balor's Eye, a magically preserved eye said to belong to the mysterious Fimir god, able to open a rift into the realm of chaos and suck all of the user's enemies within. Neat.
another wretched foul lizard thing joins the
Mr.
red
Wheelman, good to see you, dude.
Cursed Sotek spawn.
Haven't been able to catch many streams lately. Glad I could make it today.
I'm also glad you can make it. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well, my dude. Okay, this just gives me a higher capacity for Bale Fiends, so I guess I could pick up a new general. Let's get a Fimir Noble. Can't quite afford anything just yet, but we will be able to soon. Thanks so much for the 6 months, dude. Really appreciate it. What does Malekith think of Hellebrand? Malekith appreciates. Malekith, I think, has a respect for Hellebrand, but he also sees her as a very potential threat. Because while Malekith very much claims to be the incarnation of Cain, or like the favored of Cain, he knows that Hellebrand knows that he's full of shit, and that's not true. Like he's keenly aware of the fact that if Hellebrand wanted to stir up the cult of Cain against him, she absolutely could. So he does keep a very kind of careful eye on her, at a good distance, because he's just very aware of the fact that she is a very notable threat. All right, real quick, I'm going to reload us back in because some of our features aren't loading. This is how you fix it. Garsman 14, good to see you. That is correct. No, Talaris is the favorite of Cain that is currently alive. That is actually true. Keep your friends close to your enemies closer kind of deal. Something like that. I don't think Malekith sees Hellebrand as an enemy. If anything, I think he sees Hellebrand as a very useful tool, just one he has to be cautious with. Because he's keenly aware of the fact that Hellebrand hates his mother. Like, Hellebrand literally hates Morathi more than anybody else. There is nobody that hates Morathi as much as... nobody hates Morathi as much as Hellebrand does. And to... For Malekith, that is a very, very useful tool, because Malekith works very, very hard to keep his mother kind of under control and at a healthy distance. We attack now! Why does Hellebrand hate Morathi? They have a long relationship. They've known each other for thousands of years. And when they first... Hellebrand was originally born in the elven colonies in the old world, back when the elves and dwarves were allied. And Hellebrand was like this just unbelievably beautiful elven maiden who wanted nothing more than to serve as one of Morathi's handmaidens. But when she tried to ingratiate herself to Morathi and basically like be accepted into her court, Morathi immediately hated her, because Hellebrand was actually more beautiful than Morathi was. And also Morathi did not seem to genuinely believe that, she did not believe that Hellebrand's, how do I say this? Hellebrand's, I guess you could almost say like worship of her or desire to serve her was genuine. Morathi saw Hellebrand as a huge threat, because she realized that Hellebrand was in many's opinions, more beautiful than she was. And she also realized that, and when Hellebron talked to Morathi, Morathi just didn't really seem to understand or believe in her genuine feelings of like wanting to kind of almost worship Morathi and serve her. So Morathi very much saw her as this prattling, lying little deceitful creature that just wanted it close to her for her own benefits. So Morathi treated her like shit. Like Morathi treated Hellebron terribly, and was like exceptionally cruel to her, and just treated her like she was just a complete idiot, and also like completely unworthy of acknowledgement or anything of the sort. And it shattered Hellebron. Like Hellebron was genuinely like emotionally destroyed by what Morathi said and did to her. So that is actually what caused Hellebron to seek a different path in life, and she actually found her calling through Cain. Has dedicated herself completely and utterly into being a bride of Cain, which actually ended up making her a significantly greater threat to Morathi. But the problem with that is that despite the fact that Hellebron is undeniably the most loyal servant there is to Cain, Morathi was the originator of kind of the modern cult of Cain, although Hellebron did have some very significant impacts on the cult as it currently stands. But in any event, the other thing what causes a lot of their modern tension is that Hellebron sees Morathi as a fake. You know, Hellebron sees that Morathi is not a true bride of Cain. She is only using Cain for his power, but other than that, like, she doesn't actually give a shit about Cain, which is true. But it was to Morathi that Cain taught the secrets of the cauldrons of blood. So Morathi is the only one who knows how to build cauldrons of blood, and she's also the only one who knows all of their secrets and power. So for instance, if you wanted to say, ooh, that's not good. Let's say, for example, you wanted to use a cauldron of blood for its most popular power, which is to give to give yourself immortal youth, essentially. You need to understand how to properly use the full power of the cauldron of blood. But in order to do that, you have to be taught it by Morathi. So Morathi, out of spite, never taught Hellebron how to utilize that particular ritual for the cauldrons of blood. That's why Hellebron gets old every year. The reason that like all of the other like hag witches, or whatever you want to call them, the reason they all stay young, or the reason all the death hags and everything stay young year round, but Hellebron doesn't, is because Morathi is too much of a spiteful bitch to actually tell Hellebron how to maintain her youth permanently. So Hellebron has to do her own version of the ritual, which is far inferior, and she has to redo it every year on Death Night. Those axes are so fucking gigantic when they hit the enemy or they hit bottles.
Chaos good.
Hot Godly, Spoonbleeder, and Dragon Legend. Good to see you all. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're all doing great today. Alright. Marienburg is ours. Goody. I have worries about Nagash if he's added. I feel they will underpower the hell out of him for balance reasons. So Scratch, my big theory about Nagash is that he's probably gonna be extremely powerful, but what I think they're gonna do is they're probably gonna make it where he like he starts off the campaign like if he's a regular legendary lord, which he might be, he might not be. If they make him a legendary lord, what they will probably do is have it that when you start a campaign with him, what will basically go down is that he will have oh my gosh, my brain. What will probably go down is that he will start off fairly weak, but as you play through the campaign and get access to various like goodies and different things and stuff like that, he will continue to grow in power. And eventually as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, he gets like absolutely terrifying, and will become like obscenely powerful over time. Now personally, I'm still kind of the opinion that I feel like Nagash is going to be a legendary hero, not a legendary lord. I think it would be easier to have him at a more significant level of power if that when he joins your campaign, he comes in focused much more on he comes in focused much more on like you have to earn him, and because you have to earn him, that means that by the time you actually get him, he comes in like pretty hefty. I see that chaos corruption is causing me negatives. Mine isn't. Mine's giving me positives. I'm not getting attrition, and I'm getting +10 control. Yeah, no. It would also allow Nagash to be available to like any of the undead factions. Do you have bonuses to bog riders? No, you have bonuses to the infantry. Okay, so I'll put the bog riders in his army actually. what do I think happened to Archon the Black when he got touched by the Everchild? So it's vaguely implied that what Aliathra, the Everchild, did to Archon. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll be friends with you, Kimmler. I don't have any friends. I like friends. To me, it seemed like what it implied happened is that she basically gave Archon the Black his own will back. Like he basically gained the ability to make his own decisions and started feeling like vague emotions and stuff again. He was kind of, it seemed like she kind of freed him a bit from Nagash's like hold over him. Now what exactly that itself does, you know, who could say? But from when I was reading the book, that is the vibe that I got from it. Was that she basically hit him with something that kind of seemed to shift Nagash's hold on him a little bit. Now, what does that ultimately accomplish? I don't know. Who could say? Dr. Diego, Fraud Zipper, good to see you guys. I really don't like Nagash as a hero, and I think most of the player base will dislike that. I don't agree with that, but I mean, you're free to think that. I don't agree though. Like, I think the implementation of Ariel was fantastic. I think they did a great job with Ariel and the way she's implemented. And they make sure that like every Wood Elf faction is able to get a hold of her and she's able to be extremely powerful. I think doing the same thing with Nagash would not be a terrible decision. Granted, that's just my opinion, but I can't afford them. How would I boost Daniel? How would I boost Daniel? I don't know. I haven't really played Daniel in a hot minute. Like a long hot minute, so I'm not really sure what his issues are at the moment, to be totally honest with you. Kind of one of those things I need to like sit down and look into. You just couldn't see Nagash serving others. I mean, that's a very weird way to look at legendary heroes. I think that's a very not smart way to look at it. Like, Ariel is not serving your faction when you play the Wood Elves. Like, it just means they're a part of your faction. That's such a weird, bizarre interpretation of like, oh, well, if it's not a legendary lord, they're serving. Like, what the fuck are you on about? Lord Croak doesn't serve. That's a very silly way to look at it. It's like when you have to work to get the characters to like come off from whatever it is they're doing to agree to assist you, and you're earning a really powerful character being a part of your faction, and they're able to join any of your armies and also allow you to create a super stack by stacking them with your legendary lord instead of having to be by themselves in an army. I will say, if there's one thing that genuinely rustles my jimmies, it is people's obsession with that every fucking character has to be a legendary lord. They're like, every character has to be a legendary lord. Every character. Like, if they're not a legendary lord, it's wrong. It's like, why? It's so fucking obnoxious, though. Like, it's so goofy to have every single character have the exact same position, and it just doesn't work that great. Nagash leads, he's not really a hero. I mean, Nagash is sometimes a general, but Nagash also Okay, let's get a couple things straight about Nagash. One, Nagash is a capable general, but he rarely is actually like leading his entire armies on his own. He usually divvies up his armies into different groups. Nagash tends to be I'm gonna sit in the back and blast people with magic the entire time, not I'm gonna be sitting around like giving commands and being like really strict on orders and such. He can be a good tactician in general when he wants to, but like Nagash's main focus is being an insanely heavy support character who also is able to like deal insane amounts of damage and is like a super powerful wizard. Like Nagash is not I'm gonna lead from the front and be like a great mighty general of my army. And like Ariel is literally the faction leader of the Wood Elves. Like, period. End of story. Not debatable. It's literally written hardcore down in the lore and in the army books of that the faction leader of the Wood Elves is Ariel. The end. Period. Which is why, like, if you're playing any of the Wood Elves, except for Drycha, like, she should be able to appear for you. Because either she should be in charge of everyone, or she should be available to everyone. If you have Nagash show up as his own legendary lord, here's what I'll say about Nagash. Here's what I'll say about Nagash. If you want Nagash to be a legendary lord, he has to come with a new race. I don't think that Nagash can come out and be part of the Tomb King's Vampire Coast or Vampire Counts. He'd have to come out with Undead Legions. If he comes out with Undead Legions, like, that's fine. But the thing about the Undead Legions is that the thing you do from there then is that Nagash would kind of be by himself, which is fine. Like, I'm not against the idea. Like, having Nagash, like, he comes out, he leads the Undead Legions, and he's like their only legendary lord. Like, if they really want to, maybe they could give him like the Nameless as a backup character, just so it's not just him. That could definitely work. I just, like, I'm also perfectly fine with him being a legendary hero. I don't see any kind of issue with that. I could go to war with Bretonia, but I think we're gonna focus on our first enemy. Oh, we have a cute little thingy. You got Sotek ranting? You did. It's making my stomach hurt. Mr. Wheels, thank you again for the 6 months. What about the Laralorn Wood Elves? The Laralorn Wood Elves now, with the new lore we have from Cubicle 7, they're a little weird. They're essentially an independent kingdom, because they are Wood Elves, but politically they are much closer aligned to Ulthuan, as far as like their culture and their politics and their like the structure of their government tends to be much closer aligned to the High Elves than it is to the Wood Elves. Basically, they are the High Elf Wood Elves. The High Elfy Wood Elves. Ulthuani Wood Elves is the best way to think of them. But they acknowledge Athel Loren, but they do not take strict orders from Athel Loren.
Joins the red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
Stream for a stream gods.
Stream for the stream gods. She looks very uncomfortable in that seat. Also, where does her tail go? I like how they added a little banner. That's funny. I do like the way the Fimir are holding the throne, though. That actually looks really good. Scratch, thanks so much for the 6 months, and Press P, thank you so much for the 4 months. What happened to Anarian's soul after he died? Anarian's soul was interred in the Isle of the Dead, along with the other, where other Phoenix Kings would also eventually be interred. And his soul stayed there until the end times, and everything blew up, and then his soul got ate by Slanesh. And then he stayed in Slanesh's guts until Marathi came for him, and then Marathi ate him, and then he died, and he perma died after that, because Marathi used his soul essence in order to ascend herself to Marathi Kane, which is her form as a god. Suppose we could leave a little bit of a force to deal with this. It's a Hunts Marshal or Huntsman General, 2 halberds and 2 crossbows. So if I leave these guys down here, leave the swamp demons, and then we'll leave some hounds. That should be enough. Speaking of Age of Sigmar lore, I did finish reading Soul Slayer last night. I actually really liked it. It was sad though. Like I was very surprised by how somber it was. It definitely gave me a very strong. It definitely reminded me a lot of a couple of the Gotrek and Felix books. Where like they win, but it's a very somber ending. I had a very good time with it. Any news on Felix? No, nothing yet. And it also felt like the end of a trilogy. Part of me thinks that Darius Hinks might not write any more Gotrek books, because it really feels like this was his trilogy, and this was like the culmination of it. 'Cause, I mean, it felt like the end of a series, as opposed to just like, you know, another book. So a part of me wonders if this is his last Gotrek book, considering we know the next Gotrek book is written by a different author. A good AOS Gotrek book? I thought those were things of the past. I don't know what you're talking about. I, in my opinion, all of the AOS Gotrek books have been fantastic. I have loved each and every one of them. All 3 by Darius Hinks were really, really good. And the audio dramas by, my boy, David Geimer are fucking incredible. Like David Geimer is probably my favorite Black Library author right now. Who's the new Gotrek book written by? I don't remember off the top of my head. They revealed it at the most recent Black Library thing. So what is this weird sorcerer unit that apparently has a shooting attack? How are we stalking? Is that from you? Hellmother's bidding, crush our foes. Damn. Protect the throne, crush our foes. Wow, okay, that's like insanely strong. Okay. What do you guys do? I have a very strong suspicion that these guys are going to be one of those units from the old medieval mod, where it was like it would just be a ranged, it would just be a unit of wizards, but they would just like shoot artillery beams, and it was so goofy. I have a very strong suspicion that's what's about to happen. If they'll shoot, they can't seem to get line of sight going.
Joins the red host.
Hey, Sir Grunty, thanks so much for the 9 months. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Smog Hog, how you doing, dude?
Sotek spawn.
I'm super happy to be your ever dedicated mod.
Appreciate it, dude. Thank you so much for the 17 months. With how big the Fimir seem to be, there sure is a lot of them. Well, most of them are pretty small. Like, none of these units are like the big boys from the Norska roster. They're all little boys right now. I think these guys are maybe a little bigger. No, yeah, see, these guys are still small entity. Which is a little weird because this says that these are Fem, so they should be larger. Like the Shurls should be small, but it feels like, I don't know, the sizes do feel a little inconsistent. Can I see your shooting attack now, please? Fire at will. Oh my good God. Weird, but okay. Oh shoot, I totally forgot about this army over here. Oh god. Oh god, we're taking so much free damage. Where are you? So these guys are kind of like sepulchral stalkers, it seems like really not good in melee sepulchral stalkers. Make yourselves useful. Did the Nehekaran Priest King's souls get to experience their afterlife before returning to the Tomb Kings? Yeah, they do. There are a fair number of notes about the Nehekaran underworld. It's basically the way it's described is that when the Tomb Kings die, and they go into the realm of souls, basically what awaits them there is that it's kind of like a massive, almost endless realm that has a bunch of tiered like palaces, and depending on how like important you were in life, you know, however notable your role was to the Nehekaran gods, and the more authority and such that you were given or had or whatever, the more of that you had, the better spot that you got in the afterlife. So the closer you were to the top. So like for Cetra was at the very, very top on like the highest roof, and had this like immaculate balcony with all of his servants and slaves and everything he would desire, while waiting for his opportunity to return to the to the realm of the living. Meanwhile, you have and so like he's at the very top, and then there would be different tiers of platforms that you go down and down and down, and they basically are left in the afterlife with all the things that essentially they were like buried with or took with them. So you know, they were surrounded by like wealth and food and slaves and loyal soldiers and all this other stuff, and they sort of just sat there and waited patiently for the time for them to return. What about Nakaf? So, well, Nakaf would have been with Cetra. Crown of the Hellmother gives you more winds of magic when charging, spell resistance, and a ward save. Neat. Okay. I think I'd rather get bigger pink fire. We'll say I would very much like for this mod to add the new Dark Elf feature where you get to raid, like when you're in raid stance, you also get slaves instead of just money. I think that would be a really nice change. Be able to get some bigger stuff. Nope. Okay, give me, I want swamp demons. No, that'll suffice for now. What's your starting capital? Wrecker's Point. Yeah, you start in Wrecker's Point. And I will say that the Tomb Kings in general, they are fine with the Realm of Souls, but they vastly prefer the living world. But that's because the Tomb Kings are incredibly arrogant, and the thing that matters to them most is power and conquest. They want to be ruling over their kingdoms. They want to have vast legions and control the world that they were born into. They very much see the afterlife as a place of waiting, not a place of like living forever. Hello. Thanks for the money, Cathay, and the slaves. Appreciate it. go. Arcane Conduit. Very nice.
Another wretched, foul lizard thing joins the red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
Yo.
Yo. Let's get a beast of Nurgle. More Boglars. Hey man, I'm new at this game. Any tips? Yeah, a lot of tips. Is there any particular aspect of it you're struggling with? Like, are you struggling more with like the empire building side? Or are you struggling more with like the battle side? Was there any chance for a mortal to conquer and reformulate Egypt? I assume by Egypt you mean Nehekhara. I mean, it would be possible, but it would be super freaking hard. Savage orcs? Not on my property. Oh, the Bretonians are helping them? Oh. What heresy is this? The peasants are like, the orcs have ridden to our aid. They're like knights, but less mean to us. I assume Fimir don't like greens. Fimir don't like anybody. The Fimir do not like anybody. You bought it, but I would say the battle part is difficult. Yeah, okay, so the battles, generally speaking, obviously set yourself at first on like a lower difficulty to give yourself a little bit more wiggle room. But the best thing to do for battles is to know the following things. Number one, you have a lot of different unit types. Whenever you look at a unit, you're gonna get like, you get a lot of information here that kind of tells you a little bit about their stats. You have abilities down here that kind of explain like what, and up here they give you like little keywords that try and explain what they're good and bad at. A couple things that are really helpful to know in this game when fighting against the AI early on is that you can, like, whenever you click and drag your units around, your goal is basically to make, for the easiest start, your goal is basically to make a battle line of units of usually infantry that you make into a big line like this, and then you want to support your front line of like weaker infantry with like key notable units. For instance, this big guy here is called a Beast of Nurgle. So he's a big fat boy that does a lot of debuffs because he has this ability called Cloud of Flies, or sorry, not this one, Slime Trail, which debuffs enemies near him. So because he's good at debuffing people, I want him supporting my troops. That way he makes enemies fighting them less good. Next, for your ranged units, you want to have your ranged units generally behind your melee line, though you need to understand what kind of weapons your ranged units use. For instance, this unit I have, they are a unit that when they shoot in a straight line. Their shots don't arc, right? They don't go up and then down. They just shoot straight forward. So because of that, I want them kind of more off to the side because they can't shoot anything if there's somebody in front of them. So they kind of have to be on their own. On the other hand, these guys with like throwing weapons, so these guys like throw javelins and these guys throw axes, they throw their weapons up in an arc. So I can put them behind my front line and they're gonna throw things over it. And like archers, so like archers and crossbows will shoot up and over, whereas guns tend to shoot in straight lines. So like if you're playing with units that have guns, you usually want them on your flanks, or what you can do, another really good strategy is like if you have a unit of shooting, what you could do is in your front line, if you left click a unit and then you right click on the field and drag, you can kind of change their, like, the way they're organized. And what you can do is create like a little bit of a gap between your melee units. And if you put a ranged unit right behind them, they will shoot through that gap. And you just make sure the enemies don't slip through and get on your ranged unit, and they'll be able to just fire with impunity. So that could be really cool. Some other stuff is like, I have these units that have this little arrow above them, which means they have Vanguard deployment. And Vanguard deployment basically means I can deploy the unit anywhere instead of inside the green box. So I'm going to put these guys in this forest, and this little eyeball means they're hidden. So the AI doesn't know they're here, or my enemies don't know they're there. And since this unit is really, really fast, what I'm going to do is once the enemies have fully engaged, I'm going to send my fast units around the back to get on the enemy ranged units and tear them apart, because usually ranged units are very bad at defending themselves in melee. So if you have like a unit of cavalry or like warhounds or beasts, just something that moves fast, then a really good plan can be to send them far around the side. And you know, it'll take them a little extra longer to get there, but when they do get there, you know, they'll be more than capable of tearing apart your enemy's back line. If you have characters in your army, characters are great. You can use them for lots of different things. Wizards have the abilities to cast spells, which are over here, and you kind of want to mess around with the spells and learn what they do and try and find the best use for them. But you also have a lot of characters that are melee specialists. So like this guy doesn't have any spells. He doesn't even really have any abilities. He's just a beat stick. He gets in there and he kicks the crap out of people. But he also provides leadership to my troops. So I kind of want to put him over on the opposite flank from my general. That way, you see this kind of like this blue line here. Anyone inside the blue line is getting buffed by my general's leadership. So like they're being inspired by his presence. So I'm wanting to keep them nearby my general to make sure that their leadership stays high so they don't break and run away. A lot of those are like really important things to note early on. Some other big things that a lot of people don't necessarily think of when they're playing the game for the first time is like little tricks to move your army. So like if you select your army and you have them in a formation you really want to move them in, if you hold down the left alt key and then you click and hold the left mouse button, you can move them around in formation like this. And if while you're doing this, so right now I'm holding left alt and I'm holding my left mouse click. If I then hold down my left control key, it'll lock it in place and I can change what direction they're facing. So that can be really helpful. Some other stuff can be like, so like I see these enemies heading for my ranged unit. I'm going to go ahead and intercept them with my dogs because I really don't want them getting on my ranged troops. And now I'm telling a lot of my troops to charge, to really like get in there and start messing people up. And you'll see over here, there's no one preventing me from going around. So I'm going to send some of my units around the side. And the units that are going around the flank are going to focus much more heavily on getting behind enemies. Because a lot of enemies will take serious leadership penalties if you're stabbing them in the back. Because, you know, nobody likes being surrounded. That's, you know, it's a pretty bad time. So I'm just using some of my abilities at this point. You see my ranged units are firing. I just used an army ability. So I'm going to go ahead and use a spell here. So I'm holding down space. So by holding down space, I can kind of see all of my different enemies. And I'm going to go ahead and cast a spell that is going to be in this blue area. So I'm going to cast it. And it's going to come over here and do a bunch of damage. But now you see my guys are behind. So I'm going to send all of my units into these different ranged units to try and stop them from shooting me. Because if they're engaged in close combat, they can't shoot me because they're too busy defending themselves. I'm going to use this ability to see if I can lock some of these guys down and deal some healthy bits of damage. That's going to kind of deal some damage while also holding them in place, which is good. And here I'm just kind of checking on all of my units to make sure they're all like busy and doing things. A lot of the time, some of your units will flee and come back, so you kind of need to keep an eye around the battlefield. And you just want to make sure your units are like actively participating in the battle. Sometimes your units will like win a fight, or they'll just have rallied, so they'll just kind of be standing around not doing anything. And you know, you don't want that. You obviously want them fighting, so you just want to keep an eye on them to make sure they're actively like doing something, whether it's chasing fleeing enemy units or engaging with a target. You just want to kind of keep looking around the battlefield. Probably the biggest sin a lot of people commit when playing this game is that they overcommit to watching a single spot on the battlefield. Like they're zoomed in like this and they're like watching all this crap, and because they're so close, they have no idea that, you know, half of their army is off, like running off into the middle of nowhere or doing other stuff. Some other stuff, when enemy units break, their banners will be blinking and they'll get whited out. And if you mouse over them, it'll say that this unit is broken. If you see a broken unit, a really good thing to do is to grab like a cheap unit or a very fast unit like cavalry or war dogs or something like that, and send those cheap units to chase after fleeing units. Because what they'll do is get a lot of free kills, and they'll eventually shatter them. And if a unit is shattered, they have this skull over the banner, and the banner will be pure white. And a shattered unit means that unit cannot rally, and it's not going to come back for the rest of the battle. Broken units may eventually rally, so they might come back and like end up flanking you from an unexpected direction, because in your head you're like, oh, I've already dealt with this unit, but no, you haven't. They're going to come back and start attacking you again. Obviously you don't want that. So you want to make sure you're shattering enemies to ensure they don't come back. All right, here comes the peasantry. Here you can see I'm kind of reorganizing my line here against the peasants. We've dealt with all the greenskins. They're all shattered, so I don't need to worry about them anymore. So I'm going to bring all my army over this way. I'm going to use a big spell. I'm going to use a couple of big spells here to absolutely demolish these peasants. Hopefully that gives you some information. There are some really good YouTube channels out there that are purely dedicated to teaching how to play the game. Enticity is a really good one. Enticity, his channel is ENTICITY. So Enticity, Enticity. He has a lot of really good like kind of tutorials on his channel explaining a lot of the concepts behind the game. Another good one is, oh god, I'm having a huge brain fart on what his channel name is. There's somebody else that does a really good job like breaking down in-game notes. I don't remember what his channel name is. Zerkovich, yes. Zerkovich also has some absolutely phenomenal videos explaining a lot of the mechanics of the game and all that stuff. Would highly recommend checking out both of those guys' channels. And really, at the end of the day, the best thing to do is just play. You'll get the hang of it with time. How is this mod? It's okay. There are elements I enjoy about it. There are things about it I think could use some notable tweaks. So far though, it's pretty decent. It's something different. So like, if you're like really wanting to try something a little different than what you've been doing, it could be really good for that. You can see I kind of got a lot of units just sort of standing around, so I'm gonna have to kind of give everyone orders to get them back on track. Do I still use the mod that gives you more skill points? No, I don't use that anymore. I don't feel like I need it. Cheers, Jin and Underling. Good to see you guys. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well today. I will say, if there's one thing this mod makes me feel very strongly about, it's that this mod very much makes me feel that the Fimir should not be a standalone race. As I have continued to play this mod and kind of see like different interpretations on units and a bunch of other stuff, it has made it more and more apparent to me that the Fimir I don't think they function very well as a standalone. I think they definitely function much better as part of Norska's roster as opposed to on their own. Tribes of the North. I mean, if you want to call Norska Tribes of the North, you can. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I'd rather just be sitting in right stance. Okay, I would like to access these features, so I need to unfortunately reload another. We'll save and then load it, because that's the only way I can access certain features. Unfortunately, they tend to bug out. Budget Warriors of Chaos? I don't really think they're like the Warriors of Chaos at all anymore. Like, I don't know. I feel like Norska feels pretty distinct, to be honest. What's one of the worst things Karl Franz has ever done? I mean, probably the worst thing that Franz has done though it's debatable whether Karl Franz himself actually ordered it or if it was the Reichland Diet that ordered it. But the window tax riots were pretty bad. Which was that there was essentially like an organized protest against a tax that Karl Franz had levied in Altdorf. Which was known as the window tax, which was basically that you had to pay taxes based on like the amount of windows in your building, and because a lot of people were not happy about it, they were super angry about the tax. They went and protested in the streets, and the way the protests got handled was that the Reichsguard were sent out, and the Reichsguard just brutally like trampled everybody in the main street. Like they basically just came charging down the road and just ran everybody over. Faction leader gets bonus experience. Oh no, gives experience to other characters. That could be really good once they're high enough level. I do really like the Knuckle Aviv unit. I think that's a really badass unit to have added. I don't have a ton of slaves though. I don't think I'm gonna. Oh no, sorry. I just, for some reason I didn't see it until I literally just saw your comment. There you go. We're just gonna let him be a little shit. Whatever. Fimir have slaves? In this mod they do. Fimir from a lore perspective do not really, their slaves are their own species, which is the Shurls. The Shurl class of Fimir are slaves. The Fimir themselves do not take human slaves, generally speaking. Normally they take people, but they sacrifice them and use them in rituals and stuff. How can you get certifiable as a chaos faction? What? I mean, I guess the bonus damage is cool. Okay, that definitely needs to be fixed. Chaos faction, yet I get the debuff for spending too much time in chaos corruption. Tisk modders, tisk.
The red host. Cursed Sotek spawn.
2 months, yay.
2 months? Yay. Thank you for the 2 months, Lally. I really appreciate it. I don't really want this mountain, so I'm just gonna burn it down. Ooh, Executioner's Axe. That's a nice weapon. Okay, so we can get Skatox Fianna, which makes our Fianna Femme way better, but we haven't unlocked those yet. Poison Mist. Okay, that's a pretty interesting ability. Skatox Megalomania, which is we get 10% hit points, and the more we cast, or we get the Twisted Twins passive. Okay, that's kind of cool. Which Queen of the Fimir improves our apprentices, cooldown reduction, and better winds of magic. Let's do Poison Mist to start. That seems really strong. All right, what's your skill tree look like? Looks pretty standard. Oh, you can ride a bog beast? Oh, that's fun. Let's see. Worthless slave. Oh, okay. You have to pick. You only get to pick one. Okay. I guess that's fine. Untamed Monstrosities is good for Fem, Mistmores, and Bog Octopi. It gives them Rampage. Warrior Elite is for Fem Warriors and Fianna Fem, but makes them more expensive. What the fuck? Okay, that's weird. So, if you pick either of these two, they buff the units in question, but also make them worse for some reason. And then Worthless Slaves is just good. Like, Worthless Slaves is amazing. The other two are good at a price. Interesting. Not sure how I feel about that. Okay, Karl Franz looks like he's going for Gorsel, probably. How far away are you from Gorsel? Yeah. Oh, you can make it. Go tell him, no, sir! Not today, Satan. All right. Though, let's go ahead and activate. Oh, never mind. It won't matter. I was gonna be like, I'm gonna do something cool, and then I realized it was pointless. What's that random sound? Don't worry about it. It's something going on in the background. Don't worry about it. What if Fimir tastes like? Alligator. Really moist alligator.
Potrack 121 cheered. X100. Any cool lore about Fimir that I've missed and or you have not shared yet?
Name it. Oh, Zebulon the Rot. There you go. Gonna help us. Gonna help us murderize Franz.
I will.
More slaves. He can't go that way because we actually have the pass blocked by one of our allies. We're gonna make sure he can't get through. He might be able to slip around this way, but that's okay. It'll take him quite a bit of movement to do that. We can activate another one. %, additional experience for all undivided units. Big bloom. By the way, Bojack, thanks for the bits. But any cool Fimir lore that you've missed? So I would give the various highlights. Oh jeez. I would give the various highlights. Number one, Fimir used to have a really big, awesome empire. It was mostly wiped out. It got cut down to size pretty heftily after the Dark Gods abandoned them because the Fimir were the favored servants of the Dark Gods for a little while. But then the Dark Gods became far more interested in humans instead. But some other fun notes are that Fimir Mirgs, also known as matriarchs, are actually much bigger. That's something this mod gets super wrong. Is that Mirgs or matriarchs are huge. Like, they are big. They're monstrous sized. Like step on you easily size. But in this, it's just they're just like in this they made the Fimir matriarch character literally just she's just normal sized. So that's a fun note. Other fun notes are that the Fimir, we already have confirmation that they have their own lore of magic. I believe it's called the lore of, I think it's the lore of Mist, but let me double check. Let's see. Oh, it's the lore. It's the lore of the lore of the marsh, which is weirdly hard to say. Marsh magic, whatever you want to call it. But yes, they have the lore of marsh, or the lore of the marsh, as their unique lore of magic, and it's super fun and interesting. Trying to think of anything else off the top of my head. The Fimir are not only in the old world. A lot of people get it mixed up that they only exist in like the Empire and the Wasteland and stuff. It's just that the strongest Fimir presence is in what's known as the Wasteland, so the area surrounding Marienburg, the area to like the around Marienburg, especially like a little bit to the north. That's where the vast majority of the modern Fimir are. But there are also Fimir in the Reichland. There are also Fimir. There are quite a few Fimir in the Darklands. So the southern Darklands, those swamplands, like between Noblar country and the Haunted Forest, that area, there is a significant amount of Fimir as well, left over from the old Empire. Those are the only places we know for a fact they are. It is likely that there are also some, perhaps in the Southlands, though they generally tend to prefer colder environments. But there may also be some in, like Ender Koresh, but we don't know for sure. The only ones we know for sure are the ones in the Southern Darklands, the Wastelands near Marienburg, and then kind of like the Central Empire, Southern Empire. Any Fimir and Musion? Not that we're really aware of. Do I know the name of the empire under the Undersea on the Dark Elf lands? Like, what that thing? It's called the Black Way. If that's what, if you're talking about like what that area is called. It's sometimes known as the Underground Sea. But it's a like official name is the Black Way. But if you're asking who lived there, we don't know. I feel very strongly that the evidence points very strong. I believe that the evidence points to it being the fishmen lived there, but we don't know for sure. I don't think many Fimir live in Norska. Not a ton. There are probably some, but not a lot. How'd the procedure go? It went well. The procedure went well. The information that I got back was what I wanted to hear. Like it was what I was hoping for, so it's really good. Which is just basically that my insides are hurt. they're wounded, so to speak, but they are healing well. And I just got to keep doing what I'm doing, and they should heal up with time. What happened to the Fimir Empire? After the Dark Gods abandoned them, most of their empire was destroyed by the dwarves and elves. Yeah, the elves and the dwarves, primarily the elves, because the elves took over the elf empire. So when the high elves came over and they colonized the old world, basically all of the areas they colonized used to belong to the Fimir, and they pushed them out very heavily. What happened to my insides? It was likely, it's not 100%, but it had something to do with that my body had like a really severe acid reflux type reaction to something that happened. And when that occurred, it kind of severely burned my insides, which is super fun. And it's likely that it's very likely that stress played a key factor in that, because if you get too stressed, and you're not taking care of yourself, which I wasn't really at the time, it can cause the lining in your stomach to kind of fail, like to not do its job. So after Chloe died, that was kind of the real catalyst. But Chloe dying kind of set me down a little bit of a spiral. And I wasn't making a lot of good decisions, like health-wise or mental health-wise. And I think that led to my stomach lining kind of failing. And it resulted in my stomach acid getting the opportunity to severely burn the inside of my stomach. And when that happened, it caused a really bad reaction that caused it to go up my esophagus, and then it burned the shit out of my esophagus. And I've been recovering from that for about a month. Fun times. So don't do that. Take care of yourselves. I will say though, they did some biopsies, and I can definitely feel it, which is why we're actually going to go ahead and call it for today.